Okay, so welcome back. So we're now going to look at our next part of the risk assessment, okay? And it's going to be part 3. So let's scroll down to part 3, okay? This is a newer version of the NEBOSH template. It's still not perfect. This is the one that produced by NEBOSH, but we need to highlight some, I need you to add something extra into it as well, which is in the guidance, but it's not in the example risk assessment, okay? So this is just a quick overview. It's 1, 2, 3 pages. There we go, 3 pages. Okay. So and this is, you wouldn't normally have this in a risk assessment. The risk assessment that you'll be familiar with or using in your workplace will be similar to part 2, and that's how it will look. But it is an assessment, so that you kind of need to show the examiner that you know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about. And also to get you to look into a bit more detail and justify why you're putting certain actions in. Okay, so we have the moral, general legal, not specific, but general legal, and financial arguments. Okay, because later on we'll have something called specific legal. Okay, specific legal. Okay. And it's be very careful with that. Okay, so moral implications or moral argument. It's an argument. Okay, so remember, it's not an argument. You're not just listing the moral factors. You're kind of arguing it. Okay, as to why the organisation needs to do something about it. What are the implications if they don't do something about it? Okay, so we have the moral implications is here. Okay, use this as an example. Okay. Use this as an example. Then we have, I just put a line there personally, I have blank line, but financial impact. Okay. There we go. This is also potentially financial impact, but we're kind of getting into the legal aspect now. Okay. But it's, there we go. It still is a financial impact as well. Okay. So let me just see this into the next page as well. Oh, sorry, not the next page. It's just this page here. Okay. Sorry, the previous example risk assessment that went into the next page. Okay, so here we have moral argument, financial argument, and the legal argument. Okay, yeah, these are legal implications, fines and prosecutions, but also, yeah, they are also financial. Okay, now what is missing? Okay, are the quotes to the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974. It's not here. You probably agree it's not here if you were to read over this. Okay. Now the NEBOSH have produced a draft version, but when they published it, they didn't publish the draft. It's accidentally been missed out, and I've been in contact with NEBOSH recently, so there will be another version that will come out. All it will have is that the extra Health and Safety at Work Act bit, okay, which is under the legal implications. Let me just show you in the guidance what I'm talking about. Okay, NEBOSH guidance May 2021. Okay, let me just scroll down. Okay. Previously, it didn't even give the example. It just said you need to have you need to quote legislation, but it wasn't very clear. Okay, so we have moral, general legal, and financial arguments for all actions. For all actions, not just the one action. The legal arguments must cover duties that would apply to all workplace situations, such as duties under the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974. So maybe quoting things, if it's employees that are likely to be injured, then you're going to quote maybe some references to Section 2 of the Health and Safety at Work Act. If it's third parties, then maybe looking at Section 3. That's just an example. Okay, we're not looking for pages and pages. We're just make sure you are referencing the Health and Safety at Work Act. Okay, yeah, but this is just a perfect example as to why it's not very clear. Yeah, because it's not in the example. Okay, so just be very, very careful with that. Okay. So that is your moral, general legal, and financial arguments. Okay. This is looking at all the risks. Okay. And the implications, as opposed to this next bit is you're going to pick 3 actions. Okay. 1, 2, 3 actions. Okay. What do I mean by that? We're going to look at the guidance. Okay. Just open up the guidance. And we have, let me just see if they've tidied it up a bit. Nope. Okay. So it says sort of. Okay. You must use the table in part 3 of your risk assessment pack to prioritize your actions and justify your selection. So that's what we're going to do now. Once you've completed the risk assessment, which includes allocating actions, remember that was in part 2, you must pick what you consider to be the 3 highest priority, most urgent actions needing attention. These actions can be associated with the same or different hazard categories. The important thing is that they need to be your highest priorities for action. Okay? You must give a justification for why you think these are the highest priority, most urgent actions. Okay? So let's have a look. And it's the way it's worded is a bit of a strange one. Okay? That's what we just looked at. So it should really go down to here. Okay, this is why the guidance is a bit flawed, because you would do this first, then you would look at your 3 highest priority actions. So you are down to here. Okay. Okay. So let me just show you briefly the risk assessment. Okay, we're just going to flick between the 2. Okay. So now they've added this into the template. It never used to be here. It says taken from column 4 of the risk assessment. Okay. So column 4 is 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Copy and paste it. Use this. Copy and paste it, and then maybe add a couple of introduction words to it or something. But don't put an action that is not in here. Okay. Don't make up an extra action. It needs to be one from not necessarily the vibration, but just whatever you feel is the most urgent action. Okay. So let me just scroll back down. There will be a bit of jumping about for you back and forward. Okay. So they've put purchase a mobile bridge to allow mechanics to be able to safely access both sides of the inspection pit and working at ground level. Okay. So here we'll look at the example, okay, and then we'll go back to the guidance. So specific legal argument, okay. Don't just quote legislation, you need to provide an argument, okay. A justification, why, what are the implications, why should you do something about it, for example, okay. They've introduced the company, NG2 is the name of the company, okay. They're referring to working at heights, because it's in the working at height category, which is referencing working at height regulations. Okay, and then we have the kind of argument part. I'll hold my hands up and say it's not the strongest argument that they've included, but they've included an argument. Okay, you can go better than that if you feel necessary. Okay, consideration of the likelihood and severity should include. Okay. I just want to check something. Okay. Types of injuries or ill health, numbers of workers at risk, how often the activity is carried out, and how widespread the risk is. Okay. So just this one here. Back to this one. Types of injury or ill health. You'll see it here. Okay. So there it is. Numbers of workers at risk. There we go. Okay. How often activity will be carried out, and how widespread the risk is. Okay. So there's another version, the older version of the risk assessment did not have these 4 things there, but it was in the guidance, which meant that most people did not follow it. Okay, and this was not in the NEBOSH example either. So which meant that people were copying the NEBOSH example, and it meant that they weren't passing. Although it's in the guidance, not everything from the guidance is transferred over to the NEBOSH example. But it is now, okay, except for obviously previously we talked about Health and Safety at Work Act not being included. Something that was removed was actually something called a little matrix was in here before. I thought I would actually just stick it back in, and I'll show you what I mean by the matrix. I'll open up the old version of the risk assessment. If you're one of our students, I'll give you a copy of the old version and highlight the bits in red. If you're not one of our students, then you can just pause the video and then look at it from there. So here is the old risk assessment, and this will make a bit more sense when we look at likelihood and severity. Okay, you might want to add a wee table in, because up here they've got is severity. Where's the severity? Yep, severity, there we go. Severity rating for the hazard being realized is set at major. What does major mean? Okay, well there's major there. Okay, if you're familiar with risk assessments, then you can use, I would create a wee risk assessment matrix. You would usually have something like this in part 2 of the risk assessment, which is strange that they don't. So, but I would create this just to go that one step further. Okay, so there you go, just the red text. You don't need to duplicate it for each action. I've just put in, please see justification 1 for the severity categories. And again, further down, you don't need to put the table in again. You just put, please see justification 1 for the severity categories. So let me go back up. What I would suggest is don't copy this word for word. If you're familiar with risk assessments, you've done your NG1, then create your own risk assessment matrix. Okay, mainly the severity categories. That's the main thing. You don't need likelihood categories in here. Okay. But that's up to you. I would suggest putting it in, because that's what was required previously. It just provides a bit of clarity as to what major means. Okay. So that is, let me go back to the previous template. But what I'm going to do before that is I'm going to look at the blank template form actually, just very quickly. I'm going to scroll down to this bit. Okay. So for internal students, I've just popped this in there so they don't forget, because it's not in the NEBOSH example. Okay, moral, general legal, and financial arguments, and then further down here, I've just copied this in here. Okay, and then please see justification for 1. Please see justification for 1. So it saves you having to type something out. But what I would say is reword it, create your own. Okay, I've put a wee black dot there, so when you type on it, it's automatically black text. You don't, and what to do is delete any red text before submission. So design your own. That's what I would suggest. Okay, and then you can refer to that, because it's a visual right in front of you. You can refer to it when you're writing your risk assessment. Okay, so back into the example NEBOSH risk assessment again. I need to scroll down again. Okay. Okay, we have our next bit. Okay, so justification for action 1. Remember, there's 3 different ones you have to write about. So how effective the action is likely to be in controlling the risk. This should include the intended impact of the action, justification for the timescales that you indicated in your risk assessment, and whether you think the action will fully control the risk. Okay. So the bridge will improve working practices in the area of the inspection pit. At the moment, workers tend to jump from one side to the other, which has obvious risks associated with it. Okay, so that's that part there. Okay, you could improve in that if you want. It's okay. I would say it's okay. Justification for the timescale that you indicated in your risk assessment. So there we go. I've given a timescale of 2 months, as this is a specialised piece of equipment and nobody in the business has used before. That nobody in the business has used before. The business will need to source a supplier and then arrange a delivery date. It's hoped that this project will be completed well within the 2-month time frame. And the final one is whether you think the action will fully control the risk. The bridge will definitely reduce the likelihood of falling into the pit and getting serious injuries. Risk will be adequately controlled. So that's all you're doing is following this and writing something about it there. Okay, there we go. And you do the same for the rest as well. I'll let you read through these in your own time. Okay, just before we finish this video, I want to quickly pop up the guidance just to make sure that you're clear and how it's worded in the guidance. And that's to kind of force you to look at the guidance as well, because most people don't. Okay, and they miss kind of key things. So let me go down to part 3. Oh, there we go. Okay. So specific legal arguments, consideration of the likelihood and severity of the actions. That was the wee table that we talked about creating for severity. Yeah. Each action. Okay, also for each action, your legal argument must reference relevant UK legislation where applicable, so relevant to the action that you're talking about. So it's working at heights, for example. Okay. So when talking about the control of hazardous substances, you should reference the relevant duties under COSH, or the control of substances hazardous to health regulations. Please note that you're not expected to include detailed descriptions of the regulations. You just need to say what the duties under the regulations are. For example, you could say that your employer has a duty to eliminate or reduce risks to health and safety from noise at work. Okay. And then consideration of the likelihood and the severity, just sort of further guidance on that, taking into account of current control measures of injury, ill health, or harm occurring. This must include consideration of the types of injury, ill health, or harm likely to be seen, the number of workers at risk, how often the activity is carried out, and how widespread the risk is. These are things that people missed. Okay. So, for example, does the same threat exist in other parts of the organisation, or different areas of the organisation? So make sure that all this is in your risk assessment. Okay, it's not always in the guidance. Remember, just make it's not always in the example risk assessment, as I say. So make sure you're complying with this. Detail on how effective each action is. So detail on how effective each of your chosen actions is likely to be in controlling the risk. So here you must describe the intended impact of the action, justification for the time scale that you indicate in your risk assessment for the action, and whether you think the action will fully control the risk. So it's all here, everything you need to know. Okay, so that is part 3 of the risk assessment. So hopefully that's been of help to you. Okay, so